Alright, so right now we're going to sew up the Marcel Barrel Bag, this time with a drop-in lining instead of using binding, so which might be easier for some people. I'm doing things differently on this one than how it's written in the pattern, so if you want to follow along with the pattern exactly, watch the first video that I posted. I'm using a double pull zipper on the top for this, not necessary, but and I'm using cork fabric, and I have waterproof canvas for my lining, and on the back of each of the cork pieces I fused Decovil Light. So if you're not supposed to fuse on the back of cork, don't do that, but I don't know, we'll see how it holds up. And then on the bottom panel I fused Decovil Heavy, and then I didn't fuse anything to the waterproof canvas. And then also, instead of using strap connectors, I'm just going to use these grommets, and these are from Emmeline Bags. My zippers and zipper pulls are from mormino.com. So one issue though that I have here, and I'm just gonna roll with it because whatever, I'm not selling this bag or anything, it's just for me, or just probably gonna sit around here. Where I put these grommets, they hit the snaps on the back, so if you want to do this and use these grommets, I would suggest moving the snaps down on both your main panel and your lining pocket panel by at least 1/4 of an inch each. I think a little bit more, maybe like 3/8 of an inch, just so that they're clear from these grommets. And what I did was sew this, the lining pocket panel and the exterior pocket panel wrong sides together, turn them, and top stitch along the part where I sew only, which we will do one. And then I used a 1/4 inch seam allowance for my top stitching, which I just like a 1/4 inch top stitching on some vinyl and on thicker materials like vinyl or cork. It just seems a little easier. And then I placed these grommets using the measurements given on the pattern piece for the handle placement, so it lines up with where the handles would be, just at the top, and I measured down so that the top of the top stitching would be exactly along the top of the grommet. So just if you want to do that, make sure you move your snaps down. I didn't, but whatever, it is what it is. I don't have enough of the cork to cut out another piece now. So let's see, what else am I doing differently? My straps are double-sided, and I'm not adding an adjustable crossbody strap because I never use them on this kind of bag. So for my strap, I literally just cut the length of the cork, or the width, whatever. And this cork is from Millie's Design Co., and I'll link her shop also in the comments. And if you use code GEN10 in her Etsy shop, you can get 10% off on her cork. So, and she has like a lot of fun prints. So what I do, let's make the handle first. I made one. This video is slightly less start to finish than the other one, since that was the main one and this is kind of just supplemental. So the only thing we're doing here, we won't be adding binding at the end. So this might be easier, might be harder, whichever way you prefer. I don't think that it would be that easy to make this a turned bag. I did try one like that and it was difficult, but if you can do it, then, you know, go for it. One of my testers is actually going to try, so we'll see how that turns out. And as they were saying that, I suggested that maybe they film a video also, so I don't know, we'll see. I don't know that this person does videos. But either way, if there's a hack, I'm sure that it will be shared, how to make it turned also. So, all right, so right now, to make my, I'm making my handles 3/4 of an inch wide instead of 1 inch wide, just so that they easily fit through the grommets. The hole in the grommet is 1 inch, but I thought 3/4 inch handles would fit a little bit easier. So what I did, because I'm making these double-sided handles, I just cut 1.5 inches of each kind of cork. And then I drew a line directly down the center lengthwise on the wrong side, and I'm just putting a strip of double-sided tape along that line. And then just fold the long raw edges into the center line and press onto the tape. And I'm actually, so the one part, or the one end of the green cork, it was a little bit longer. So I'm just going to trim those up when I'm done. I'm not sure exactly how long I want the handles to be. Since I am using those grommets, it kind of changes the dimension or the length that I need them. So I'm going to trim them down at the end, and then I don't think I have any 3/4 inch strap ends, but I'm going to order some. And then I'll just put strap ends over the raw edges, since they'll be kind of sticking out above the bag like that. And I think when I attach them to the bag, I'll just put a rivet, fold the strap through the grommet, and bring the wrong sides together, and then put a grommet through both layers. Alright, so now I'm just putting another layer of tape directly down the center of the wrong side of one handle side, I guess you would call it. Alright, and then I'm just going to carefully stick the 2 layers of cork together, and I'm just watching to make sure that it stays lined up. And the green one will be a little bit longer, and that's fine. Like I said, I'll trim that down when I'm done. Oh, and sorry about my air conditioner. I was hoping that it would cool off enough. Like it's 10:30 at night right now, so I was hoping that it would cool off enough that I could just turn it off. But I kind of was in the sun a lot today, and I got a little bit burnt, and I'm hot. So sorry about the air conditioner. I think I'm gonna order maybe a new camera, but for sure a microphone, so that it won't pick up background noise, instead of just using the built-in microphone. So right now I'm just top stitching down both long sides of the handle using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. When I get to the end of that, I'm just going to actually stitch across here, since I'm going to trim that anyway. So both my handles are done. I'm not making the crossbody strap, and I'm not putting connectors on the side panels for the crossbody strap. And then we also don't have connectors to attach to the exterior pocket panels. So we're just going to place the lining pocket panel and exterior pocket panel, right sides together. I'm going to match the top like curvy edge. And I'm just going to place some of these clips on here. These clips are also from moremeknow.com. They're really nice for anything that's flat. I'm not doing a very good job of lining anything up right now either. So yeah, I love how these, they're nice and flat on the back, so they just kind of glide along the sewing machine easily. Plus they're longer, so they hold things in place nicely. They just don't work like going around 3D objects. They're not the best, but for this purpose, I like it better than regular clips. So now I'm using, I changed down to a 3mm seam allowance for my sewing portions, and I'm using a seam allowance of 5mm for top stitching. So right now we're just sewing using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Did I say I used a 3mm seam allowance? Stitch length. So I just am taking it slow around the curves to make sure I keep that 1/2 inch seam allowance. And you should be sewing just outside of the Decoville light, which I used in place of foam and in place of fleece. So normally the exterior pocket would have fleece, but this time I'm using Decoville light, and it's cut smaller so that it's not in the seam allowances, which just helps to keep things a little less bulky, because with the layers this bag can get kind of bulky. Alright, so now you want to trim the seam allowance down to about 1/8 of an inch, just around the part that you sewed. Okay, and then I trim into that little corner. Alright, so now I want to turn this right side out, and since it is cork and yeah, waterproof canvas, I'm not going to press this, but I still use my little turning tool. Just get the corners really pushed out nicely. And then it seems to kind of, once you just get it turned out really well and like push it down flat, it kind of holds its shape enough. Alright, and then again I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this part, and my longer stitch length, which is 5mm. And again, I'm just sewing along the part that I just sewed. I'm only top stitching that part. See, and as I go around the corners, I'll kind of do like one stitch at a time and lift my presser foot and rotate it just to make sure I keep that curve nice. So actually now I'm going to install those other grommets, but I am definitely not filming that part because it's horrible, so I will be back. Alright, I installed the rivets in the other side. So now, let's see. We're going to do the interior zipper pocket. Alright, so on the wrong side of the interior zipper pocket, I'm going to find the center, and I want to draw a box that is 8 inches wide, 1 inch down from the top, and 1 inch in from each side. Okay, and then 1/2 inch down from that. We'll draw another line. And then I'm going to connect those 2 lines at the end. Alright, in this part I probably will actually iron when I flip it through the pocket, just to kind of get it to hold in place, hopefully. Alright, so I want this to be 1 inch down from the top and centered. Okay, and this is right sides together. Nice. Alright, so let's see if I can wing this without pinning it. We're just going to sew directly along the lines and using a shorter stitch length, so I switched it back to 3. Alright, so now you can mark the lines if you want. I'm not going to. You cut through both layers directly down the center of that box until you get about 1/2 inch away from the end. And then you'll snip up into each of the corners. Okay, and now I'm going to kind of press this as best I can with it being waterproof canvas and pull the pocket through the hole so that it is now wrong sides together with the lining main panel. So I pressed that as best as I could. I'm going to use tape on my zipper, and I'm just putting it along the edge. I'll repeat that on the other side. Alright, so now I'm going to take off only one side of the tape, or the paper off of one side of the tape. And I'm centering it from left to right. Dang it. And just lining up the zipper in the hole so that it looks even from top to bottom. And then I'll just push that down against the tape, and then go ahead and take off the other half of the tape, or the paper off the top section of tape. Alright, and now I'm just going to top stitch around this, so I'm back to my long stitch length. I actually don't want to top stitch with this foot. I'm going to switch out to my narrow zipper foot. So if you need to switch to a zipper foot, do that here. And really, with this being drop-in, I did not just need to stop and sew this part right now. I just have the pattern pulled up and I was trying to kind of follow along so I didn't miss anything. So now I'm just going to top stitch all the way around this box using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alright, and now I'm just folding the back, or the other, whatever, I'm folding the bottom of the pocket panel up to meet the top. I'll just throw a few clips on this. Okay, and then I flip it this way so that the pocket panel is facing up, and fold the pocket panel back out of the way and sew all the way around my pocket. The bottom is folded, so you don't have to sew that. Alright, so one interior zipper pocket is done. If you like to sew name tags into your bag, you might want to sew that on now before assembling. Alright, so we're going to do the zipper. So the main zipper is 11 inches long, and then I have 2 exterior zipper tabs and 2 lining zipper tabs. I probably could do this raw edged, considering that I'm using cork, but I'm not going to. So I just place them, place the 2 tabs right sides together with the zipper matching the short ends. And I put a clip on there to hold it together. And then I'm just going to sew that in place using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I back stitch across that well. And I'll repeat that for the other side. Back to my longer stitch length, and I'm just going to fold the tabs back away from the zipper, wrong sides together, and then top stitch that. I think I'd like to stick with 1/4 inch top stitching on this bag, since that's what I've already been doing, so I'm going to switch back to my 1/4 inch foot. Now I need my exterior main panel. Okay, so I have 2 exterior main panels. The top is the side with the snaps. I'm going to place my zipper right side down clip it in place, matching alongside to the top edge of one main panel. Alright, and I'm going to sew this on using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And back to my stitch length of 3. And actually, no, I think this foot will be okay. We'll find out. Move the zipper pulls out of the way when you get to those. When you get to them. Alright, so now on the other bag you would attach a lining main panel. Since we're going to drop the lining in, we will not be doing that. So I'm just folding the zipper away from the main panel now. And I'm going to top stitch this using, I think right now, this is going to have 2 lines of top stitching. So right now I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Or no, I'm sorry, an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then when I sew in the lining main panel, I'll use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so that way I'm not like trying to top stitch over the same stitching and it gets to look funny. Alright, so 1/8 of an inch. And I'm just folding the zipper back toward the lining main panel, like the back side of the zipper. Switch back to my long stitch length. And I'm top stitching using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And then make sure when you adjust your zippers that your needle's in the down position. Okay, and then I'll repeat that with the other main panel on the other side of the zipper. Magnets are trying to attach to each other in here. Alright, and again, this is a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And back to my stitch length of 3 millimeter. know that we've got that on. All right, we're going to attach our pocket panels. All right, so here, the snaps won't line up exactly because they're meant to line up after the bag is assembled. Well, and clearly I think I marked mine wrong anyway. Let's see if these two line up. Okay. So right now I'm just lining up the bottom and the sides. And I'm just clipping all the layers together. The snaps don't match up right now because it's made so that it'll match up once the bag is completed and in the round shape. So they're kind of, the ones on the pocket are a little bit higher than the ones on the main panel, and that is how it should be. Okay, so now switch back to my other foot. So now I'm just going to baste these layers together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you can use your longest stitch length since it's just basting. And I'm only going down the sides, the unsewn sides, and the bottom. Alright, I'm just going to sew this on. So this is the bottom panel, and I still need to baste the other pocket in place, but I'm just going to sew the bottom panel to this side right now because I don't know, so I'm doing things out of order. Again, if you're trying to learn the bag or watch how to sew the bag from the pattern directly, you'll want to watch my other video, not this one. And I'm pressing that seam allowance toward the bottom panel, and then, yeah, I want it this way. I'm going to top stitch through that seam, again using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, I'm matching up the bottom and sides again. All right, and then I'm just going to base this together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm also making sure that my grommets are lined up, which they are. All right, and you'll notice that it looks like the pocket panels are too long the way they meet in the center. They're not, that's correct. Once the bag is like shaped correctly, they won't be like that. Right now, I want to unzip this zipper. We're going to line up the bottom panel with the bottom of the other main panel. Right sides together. And I think after this I might be done for tonight because I'm pretty ready to go to bed. And then we'll finish this up tomorrow morning. Alright, so now I'm just going to sew those layers together, again using a 1/2 inch seam allowance and back to my stitch length of 3. So now I'm pressing that seam allowance toward the bottom panel, and this is a little bit tricky to top stitch this seam. So I'm just going to slide the end of the zipper under the presser foot and get the presser foot into that hole, and then I'm just sliding it back. Watch out for my zipper pulls. I'm just top stitching now the other side of the bottom, and going through the pocket seems to be the easiest way. Not easy, it's not easy, but it's easiest. So just take your time and readjust as needed. And I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I forgot to change my stitch length. So the center portion of it is not bad. So it's just the two ends that are a little more tricky. We'll get it out of there in the same way. Okay, so now we have kind of a tube of the exterior, and we need to repeat this process with the lining. Do we want to sew the end panels on right now? I don't. I think that's good for in the morning because I'm tired. So far this looks good though. Maybe I actually am going to, let's get the lining to this point also. And I am going to do something along the top, so. Alright, I'm going to sew this at slightly bigger than a 1/2 inch seam allowance, just so that it will fit inside and not be like super baggy. So I'm just going like 1/8 of an inch bigger, so like 5/8 inch seam allowance. Alright, I'm actually not sure if I want to try top stitching that or not. I have an idea for the top that I want to do. Alright, so this will just be so that we can have the opening along the top be the correct width and still sew the end panels on without it being weird. So I have 2 rectangles that are 1.5 inch long, 1 1/4 inch wide, same as my zipper tabs. And I'm just going to make a mark. I want to fold a 1/2 inch to the back, and then I'm just going to top stitch that real quick. Repeat that with this one. So I'm going to match these up. The folded edge is facing inward. The raw edge is matching the top outer corner. And I'm just going to sew that in place using a 3/8 inch seam allowance along the top edge only. And then I'm going to put the other one on the other side. So it's right side down, and matching the raw edge to the side and then the top. Just like think of how the zipper tabs would be sewn onto the zipper. So now that we can't just top stitch this like we would a zipper, I'm going to take a piece of double-sided tape and run it all the way down the raw edge along the top. Alright, and then we're just going to fold that back to the wrong side by 3/8 of an inch. This probably is not exactly 3/8 of an inch, but you can measure if you want and draw a line. All right, so then just make sure that's stuck down well, and I'm not going to top stitch that at this point because we will, when we drop the lining into the bag, we'll sew that part. So let's actually, I am going to top stitch the lining bottom panels, even though I don't in the pattern, because it's not attached. It's harder the way the bag is all attached together to top stitch that. So since the lining is separate and I can access the bottom panel easier, I am going to top stitch it. I'll repeat that with this side. And again, I'm using a 1/2 inch seam, or I'm sorry, 5/8 inch seam allowance, just to kind of hopefully make the lining fit a little easier into the exterior when we're done. This. I can definitely say this goes much faster when I'm not ironing everything. Alright, and now I'll repeat this process at the top, and I'm just sewing, again, using a 3/8 inch seam allowance here, only along those little tab parts. Alright, and then I'm just again going to remove the tape and press this back to the wrong side by approximately 3/8 of an inch. I just kind of eyeball it and try to keep it even. Alright, so this is actually like going together super quick, and we're kind of in the home stretch here. So tomorrow morning we'll get the side panel sewn on, and then we drop in the lining and then attach the handles. That's like it. So we really are very close. So there's your lining so far, and here is the exterior so far, and we'll keep everything inside out for right now. So it's morning and we're ready to finish this bag. Right now I have my exterior tube and I have my lining tube separate because we're dropping in the lining. So going to sew the exterior panels on first. So what I want to do is find the center of the bottom panel. So I'm just folding that in half, and then I'm making a mark here with my chalk pencil. You could also like just snip into the seam allowance a little bit. And then find the center of the zipper tabs. I'll go ahead and do that on the other side as well. Okay, and then I have my exterior panels, my side panels, and I already have the centers marked on those from when I cut them out, but if you don't, then you can use your pattern piece or fold to find the centers there as well. Alright, so let's do one of these at a time. And I'm actually going to change my presser foot right now. Oh, that wasn't even tight. To my zipper foot, so that I can get right up in the seam. Right up close to the side panel. I always like to use my zipper foot when I'm sewing on like gussets or side panels or anything like that. Alright. So first, I'm matching the top center and bottom center, and I'm going to pin in place. If you use staples, this might be a good time to break those out. Staple basting, especially with this cork, it's kind of slippery against each other. So hopefully everything stays. And I actually, just this morning as I was drinking my coffee, was watching the video that Lauren Mormino made sewing this pattern, and she kind of basted the top before she clipped everything else, and then she mentioned that she wished she would have basted the bottom, and I think that might be a good idea to baste just those two areas first and then go ahead and do everything else. You know, let's try that and see how it works. Okay. Oh, I don't know. No, I don't know about it. This cork is definitely slippery though. Okay, so I'm only right now sewing along the bottom part that's straight. And I think that this might be helpful just because then I won't have as many clips on here that can get shifted around and slipping off and everything else. And I'm using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, which is just sewing right next to the stabilizer on my side panel. Okay, so that was just the bottom. The sun is like really shining in here this morning. I did turn off my air conditioner, so hopefully it's a little more quiet. We'll see if I can keep it off or if it gets hot in here. All right. So now I'm going to place a couple extra clips on here, but I am just going to sew along the top only. I just wanted to give it the correct curve. All right, I have my fancy stiletto somewhere. Put the seam ripper part away. So there's my stiletto from Mary Beth Made It. Oh, sorry, my logo. Which is very super handy because if you've watched my videos, you see that I used like a little tiny screwdriver before. And this is much better. Didn't know what I was missing. Alright, and when I sew around the curves like this, I try to keep my left hand inside of the bag to help guide it. Alright, don't be afraid to squish things to get it to cooperate. Sorry for all that banging. One of my neighbors apparently is doing some kind of home repair. Alright, let's see how that looks. Okay, so here I just sewed the top curve and I sewed the bottom straight edge, not the bottom curves yet. Alright, so that should actually help hold things into place. And now I'm just going to clip the rest of the way down the side panel. And I think that made it a lot easier than having all the clips on here at once because they get knocked off and they get up again. Do you get that reference? How dorky am I? Okay, so now I'm just going to sew this portion, starting back along the bottom where I previously just sewed. So just do a couple stitches there, back stitch, going around that bottom corner. If you don't have a stiletto, I suggest you get one. Very, very nice. I mean, it doesn't have to be custom, but this one is really nice. All right, and then here I'm just sewing right back around to where I started. Sewing around that top curve and make sure I back stitch as well. Okay, and you can see my sewing goes all the way right here, right next to the interfacing. This was my basting stitch for the bottom pocket. All right, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so that is easier. So I'm going to suggest to definitely clip the, hang on, let me trim the side of my pocket here. It's a little bit wider than my main panel. All right, so yeah, I'm going to suggest to clip the tops and bottoms and sew those into place first, and then clip and sew the sides separately. Much easier than having everything clipped together all at one time. Okay, and again, I just started where I stopped sewing around the top panel. And just rotate around the curve of the side panel. And I'm sewing directly next to the stabilizer. Okay, right back to where I started, and then just back stitch a few stitches. Okay, so now I'm going to trim all my threads, and I'm going to take a quick peek inside of my little bag tube here to just see how that looks, to make sure there are no weird puckers or anything. I think that'll be okay. There's a little weird spot right here on the bottom panel, but I think once it's flipped, I think it'll be okay. Okay, so now that seam allowance, because we're doing a drop-in, we are going to trim it down. And I'm just trimming it to about 1/8 of an inch, very carefully. Now when you do the binding, I suggest not trimming it down because that will make it easier to sew the binding on. Alright, so now let's repeat this process on this side. Where's my other? Okay, so right sides together. I'm just going to match up the top centers and place a few clips in place there. All right, and then the same thing along the bottom. I'm just matching the bottom centers, and I'm going to clip the straight edge in place. Okay, so let's sew the straight edge first. And I have my zipper open. I mean, you'll want it open to turn the bag right side out, but also it's nice to have it open to get your hand inside. So this is, I think maybe I don't know if I want to commit to it, but so when I film my video, or when I film my normal video, I always do it exactly according to the pattern. And I try to make the patterns in such a way that they're using materials that are easily found. So like interfacing and things that you can find at Joann Fabric or any other craft store that you go to. And I really try not to require like materials that you can't just find regularly. So like waterproof canvas, I don't know about everybody else's Joann, but my Joann doesn't sell waterproof canvas. So that's not something I typically use in my bags. I want to, or in my, like in my videos or in my patterns, because I want to be able to have anybody go to the store and buy the materials required to make my patterns. But this is kind of nice making a separate video showing alternatives to what I require in the pattern. So let me know if that's something you're interested in. You know, maybe I'll make 2 videos. Like I said, I don't want to commit to it, but if I make 2 videos for each pattern, then I have one showing exactly the way that the pattern's written, and another one showing alternatives to that. Different materials, different ways you could interface it using those different materials. And really, like, waterproof canvas is an awesome option. It doesn't require interfacing most of the time. I mean, sometimes you might want to, but it's just a really cool thing to work with. And things like cork and that you can't buy at the store. Or maybe that would be a little more advanced, and I don't want my pattern to be only for people that, you know, have been sewing for 10 years. I want everybody to be able to at least put an effort into trying to make them. So, hang on, my seam shifted. My clips are falling off. Definitely, I think staples would be a good option for this bag. Are you a stapler? I've never stapled my bags before. This one's making me reconsider that. Oh, well, I'm out of bobbin thread. No wonder. Or something's going on here. Yep. Good thing I made 2 bobbins. Alright, let's try that again. So everything was getting weird because there was no bobbin thread. Okay. Now somebody's mowing the grass. All sorts of noises today. I might go back in. I feel like this is, oh it is. I might go back in and make a second line of stitching here. It's a little bit harder when I can't have my arm inside. Ow. Careful if you get a stiletto, they're pokey. Okay. So here I just went along the top curve. My interfacing is falling off. Just a mess. Maybe I should go fix that real quick. All right, so now we'll clip one side at a time. All right, guys, it's getting hot in here. I'm gonna have to turn the air conditioner on. All right, so now I'm just going to start sewing where I stopped sewing around the top curve. Again, just a reminder to always stop with your needle in the down position when you adjust. All right, and then we'll clip this side. Okay, starting at the bottom corner. All right, I have to turn my air conditioner on. All right, sorry. Tried to keep it quiet. I'm definitely going to order some sort of microphone or something so that you don't have to hear my air conditioner all winter long, or all summer long. Winter. The hardest part right here is like getting it under the presser foot, just 'cause I have to squish things back out of the way. And I think with the Deco light, it's a little more, a little harder to get, I guess, under there because it's more firm. The foam swishes easier. Oop, I don't want to sew through my interfacing. Going around the corners and the top curve there are definitely like the trickiest parts of sewing this stiletto here is like a game changer. Alright, just don't be afraid to kind of squish your bag up and get it to do what you want. Manhandle it a little bit. Woman handle it. Whatever, handle it. And now I'm just going to check to make sure that where I started sewing matches where I stopped sewing along the bottom and the top seams. That looks good. Let me see how it looks from inside. Oh, looks good inside. Okay, so I'm just going to also trim this seam allowance. Half of my Decoville is kind of falling off. I think once I flip the bag, I'll kind of repress that from inside. So I'm just trimming my seam allowance down to about 1/8 of an inch, or maybe like a little bit wider, between 1/8 and 1/4. Okay, and now we're going to turn this in right side out, which is a little tricky with all the Decoville attached. It makes things a little bit thicker. So just take your time. So if your machine can handle it, it might be wise to keep your Decoville light in the seams, because then it would not be coming off like mine is. Okay. Whew. That's all turned right side out. Things are looking good. I'm going to go press this from the inside real quick, just to help reattach all of my Decoville that's falling off now. But it looks pretty good otherwise. Alright, now we're going to repeat the same process with the lining. Just marking my centers on the wrong side of the side panel, and on the wrong side of these kind of fake zipper tabs that we created. And that just makes sure that the opening that we have is correct to match up to the finished bag. Okay, all of my centers are marked. Now I'm just matching this up, right sides together. And I think I'll again do first the top and the bottom. I'm matching up both of the bottom seams first. They're nice and straight and easy. Do I want to use a bigger seam allowance on this? Yes, I think I'll do 5/8, so just slightly bigger. And I'm only sewing along the straight edge here of the bottom panel first. Fingers are super sticky. Like this sticky or something. Okay. Let's match up the top centers now. And just kind of go around the top curve a little bit. Okay. "5/8" seam allowance. And this is easier since it's like just the waterproof canvas and it's very flexible. You don't have like the stiffness of the bag in your way. And again, I'm using a 5/8" seam allowance for this. Make sure that your zipper pocket doesn't get in the way. Okay. And now we'll do the section between the bottom and top. Just the sides. I hope the lighting's not super weird because it's like really sunny out, but it's too bright if I just open my blinds. But it kind of looks weird or dim to me on the screen. with my fluorescent lights on is what I ended up doing. I don't know. Alright, so now I'm just sewing from where I stopped sewing around the top curve down to where I started sewing at the bottom. And I'm just making sure also that my pocket panel does not get in the seam. Repeat that on the other side. Seems like, I don't know, it seems like more steps, I guess, to do it like a little section at a time and sew it and then clip, but it is much easier, so definitely recommend. Alright, now that is sewn, I'm going to trim that seam allowance down to about 1/8 of an inch again. And this will just help it fit inside the exterior nice and snug. You don't want extra bulk in the seams. Okay. And let's do the same thing on the other side. So I guess the downside of doing this as a drop-in is that you have to sew these sides 4 times instead of twice. Oh, but I guess if you do the binding, you are sewing it 4 times. Never mind. This is easier, I think. Did I mention I'm not a fan of binding? I think I love the look. I love the finished look of it. I don't love doing it. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that since my pattern has binding, but it's true. Okay. far around the top that time. I should have just kept on going. So now I'm just going to clip the sides and the bottom corners in place. So much easier. Lauren, if you ever watch this, thank you, and I'm actually going to tell you thank you after I finish after I finish filming this, because that tip of doing well, you just did the top, but then I think you were like, gosh, maybe if I would have done the bottom too. Totally helpful. Maybe I should update the pattern with that info too. And I'll add the link. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna add the link to the video with the drop-in. And actually add a little snippet about sewing the top and the bottom first and then around the sides. May seem like extra work, but it's totally worth it. Makes it easier. Ooh, one more. Start where I stopped before. Trim all my threads, and then I'll trim the seam allowance down. We're in the home stretch. Just have to do the drop-in part, which is not typically the easiest thing to sew either, but might be easier for you than sewing binding. So I have a bag that I made that is actually a nosy pepper pattern. Crap, I can't think of the name of it. I don't know, it's the travel bag. And I use it for traveling, and it has binding though, and I never ever sewed binding in it. So it just has raw seams on the inside. That's how much I don't like binding. All right. So the lining is complete. Looks nice. Grab my exterior. I think I might want to put a strip of double-sided tape here to hold it in. I think that would make it a lot easier, which is not something, I haven't sewn a drop-in lining in a few years, and this is not something I did when I did sew them, but I think it would help make the process easier. So, and if your machine doesn't like to sew through tape, or if you don't have a good tape that, like this tape can gum up the needle a little bit. It doesn't bother me. I just kind of roll with it, but you might not want tape along this portion. I'll tape both sides, but I'm only going to take off the paper on one side at a time. the whole lining up and get it in there. So now I'm just fitting the lining to the inside of the bag, which it fits quite nicely with that 5/8 inch seam allowance, so that's good. All right, and we're only going to worry about one side at a time. So I am going to start peeling the paper back on one side of the tape, and I want to make sure that my lining is out of the way of the zipper. So I'm just looking at where the zipper is sewn to the bag inside, and I'm kind of taping it like along that stitch line, because then I know that the lining is not going to get caught in the zipper or get in the way of the zipper operating properly. And then I'm actually, when I top stitch this in, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so it will grab the lining and sew through the exterior. So I just go all the way down to the end, and my little tab should line up over the zipper tabs that are attached to the bag. If you need to adjust, you can just kind of pull it back up and adjust as needed. You just look at both ends. Okay, so that looks really good. So let's see if, I don't know if that tape will hold it in place the whole time. I am going to place a couple clips on there. Okay, and we're not even worrying about the other side at all right now. And I hate this part. Let's see. You could hand sew it in. I mean, if you wanted to. I really detest hand sewing more than I detest sewing a drop-in lining, so hand sewing is not for me, but if you like that method. Okay, so I put my 1/4 inch foot on. I am going to, let's see how I want to do this. I feel like I had it inside out last time I did one. This would be really nice if you have like a cylinder arm machine and you could just get it right up in there. I do not. How am I going to do this? I don't know if I want to turn it all the way inside out again. What if I just flip that side? I don't think that's going to work either. Ow. Bend all my fingernails right off doing this. Okay, that was a workout, but look, it's pretty on the inside too, so. Okay, I'm going to fold those pocket panels out of my way, kind of re-stick some of this down. I hope that'll be easier to sew from this side. I'm not just wasting my time flipping everything. Re-stick my tape. I had clips flying off left and right. I'm a mess. All right, let's try this. Oh, I don't wanna. I wanna sew from the exterior side. Just really take your time and make sure everything is like lined up nicely. You gotta kind of squish the bag, and if this doesn't look perfect on the inside, like nobody's probably really gonna see it that much. I'd worry more about it looking nice on the outside. All right, and I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance from the zipper and my longer stitch length of 5. So I'm just going to first sew a couple stitches, which I think I'll hand stitch since I'm up here in the corner, and then back stitch just a couple. Or I mean hand crank, not hand stitch. And I'm just going to like take this super slow at first, making sure that my lining is staying in the seam allowance. This gives you a real workout. So now I'm not really sure which is easier. It's definitely easier to assemble the panels separately. But is this easier than sewing the binding in? I don't know. If I had a cylinder arm machine, it definitely would be. Okay, once you get away from the end, it'll be a little easier. Just make sure that the lining stays lined up. And I'm just doing my best to sew all the way to the end, which is a little bit tricky. And then again, I'm just going to back stitch a couple stitches. Whew. All right, one side down, one side to go. Let's hope that I got the lining caught all the way, and I didn't at the end. That's slightly horrible, so whew. It's like a morning workout, huh? Okay, I'm just going to remove the paper off the other side and tape it in place the same way. Okay. All right, if you need to take a break after that first side, I totally understand. So this will just be the same thing. If you're using fabric and doing this, you can put pins in here, which would probably help. I can't put pins through cork, so. Once I get to the straighter part, it's a little easier. I am going to readjust to make sure that my lining is lined up properly. And I'm just kind of lining it up to cover the seam or the stitching from where I attached the exterior to the zipper previously. I stopped short there. That's just gonna be okay. Most of that's hidden inside the front pocket anyway. So I'm gonna go with it's not a huge deal. All right, so let's turn this back right side out. You'll notice that you do have like little holes at the end of the zipper here, which is not gonna be noticeable in the finished bag. But if you want to, you can stick some glue in there like Fabri-Tac. Or I think E6000 maybe is what people use, just to hold that shut, or you can hand sew it shut. Again, I don't choose to hand sew anything if I don't have to. Ugh, this is like a workout. Oh my god, one of my connectors just fell out of my bag. I have something to fix. Okay, everything is pressed, and I reattached these and I put glue in there this time, so they should be good. So now we just need to attach the handles. So I went ahead and I cut them to 17 inches long, which is just the length that I liked with these connectors. So, and then I'm marking my rivet placements, which I did one mark 1/2 inch in and the second mark 3 inches in, and that will go through the grommet, and then hopefully leave us enough room to add those strap ends that I would like to add, which I need to order. So just 3 inches centered, and then 1/2 inch centered. these. I'm going to use my hole punch here. I typically use not the smallest, but the second, I think, yes, for my grommets, or my rivets, I mean. So I'm just going to punch all of these holes. And I kind of punch the hole and then I spin it around like that to make sure that it cut all the way through and all the way around the bottom layer as well. Okay, and then we need our rivets. So again, these are 9mm by 8mm nickel rivets from Marcel bags. I need 4 posts and 4 caps. Okay, so I want the green side of the handles to face out. And I'm just going to put the post through the front. I don't know if it matters which way you do it. I always do the post through the front and the cap on the back. I don't know if that really matters, or I don't know. I just always do the same. Okay. Alright, let's get the other handle on and we are done. I should probably let that glue dry before I go bending things around. I'll fix that. Definitely glue your grommets in though if you use these, because they will come right out. And I probably should have looked at like the instructions, because I know Marcel Bags has instructions for how to use their connectors and grommets and such on their website. So I'm sure there's probably instructions for these that I did not look at. And we're done. So I like that. You could actually, if you're using these kind of connectors, you could probably leave those snaps off, because it kind of pulls them away. So like I said before, you'd want to move the snaps down if you're using these grommets, because they do get in the way. So the snap placement in the pattern gets in the way of the grommet placement. So I would move the snaps down And honestly, if I still wanted to use the snaps, I'd probably move them down a whole inch. But the way that this bag is, I think you could just leave the snaps off with these connectors. So and there's our finished bag as a drop-in lining instead of binding. So we've got 2 large slip pockets on the sides. We've got 1 zipper pocket inside. You can add any additional slip pockets. You could add a second zipper pocket to the other side. So many different modifications. There's diamond strap anchors that would look really good on this. You can make it out of cork, vinyl if your machine can handle it. Leather. Piera made one out of leather. If you are in my Facebook group, or if you look at the website listing and look through the one that says by Piera, she used leather for hers. So, yep, just make sure that whatever materials you choose, that your machine can handle it. So, hopefully this video helped if you don't want to do the binding, and you can use this drop-in method. I think I definitely could have left the snaps off of this. So, keep that in mind if you do this with these grommets. With the normal handle connectors, I would not leave the snaps off because it's not pulling the top away like that. So, alright, thanks for watching.